Hey everybody, my name is Melisha McGregor and welcome to DevOps Fundamentals. So we're going to go through just the basics of what DevOps is so that you'll have a good foundation for getting started in the DevOps world. So to jump straight into it, DevOps is like the beginning of a new era where basically we're taking the old way of doing things in the waterfall method and making them better. So the old way of deploying applications was first the developer pushes some code changes, then the operations team pushes things to different environments, and finally security does their testing. The problem with this is that if there's any issue with any part of this process, you have to start all the way over. There is no going into that specific area and fixing it. You have to go from right on the cusp of deployment all the way back to fixing code. And what that did, it made the deploy process really, really long. So to get a new feature out, it might have taken a quarter, so 3 months out of the year to get one feature deployed to production, just because every time a new code change is introduced, it has to go through this entire process where you don't get the results until the very end. But that's where DevOps comes in. DevOps fixes that by making this a more parallel approach. And basically what that means is that in DevOps, we're combined as a unit. So developers, the operations team, and in some companies that are more security conscious, we include the security team in this process. And what that means is that when the developer pushes changes, it goes through this automated flow. And if there's any issues with that code, it gets flagged immediately. The operations part of it doesn't even get triggered. Security tests may or may not be run at this point. But if there's any issue with the code initially, it gets kicked right back to the developer as soon as the DevOps process picks that up. And DevOps introduces a lot of automation, so there's not as many people involved, which means you get your feedback a lot faster and it's more accurate. So we turn to pipelines instead. That means we can run our unit tests, our security tests, we can deploy to staging. All of these things can happen in series or in parallel depending on how your system needs to flow. So with this new DevOps approach, all of the teams are kind of combined together so that they can build out this automated pipeline to get changes from the developer's local machine all the way to production where customers are. So the process in DevOps is actually only typically 4 phases, and these phases can each kick back issues to the developer or to whatever team member is responsible for taking care of them. The first phase is the build phase. This is where your code comes in from your version control and you start running your unit tests to see if there's any type of regressions or if there are any other issues you need to fix. This is where you get that nice little artifact that gets deployed to production at the end. Then you have the test phase. So you've probably already run some unit tests in the build phase, and those are out of the way. The developer knows without a doubt that there are no regressions and any new features are implemented and working correctly. So in this part, you might start running integration tests just to make sure your services are all updated. You might run some security checks here to make sure there's no potential for cross-site scripting or SQL injection attacks. And you generally just beat this artifact with everything you can think of. That means that by the time this application or this artifact has been through testing, any type of issues have been kicked back to the appropriate team and they're aware of it before before we're at the point we need to deploy right now. Then there's the delivery phase. This one is a lot of times lumped together with the deploy phase, but in delivery, what you're doing is you're shipping that artifact to different environments. So maybe you have a staging environment and several QA environments to test for those weird edge cases. Your artifact has already been through the build phase, so unit tests have run and there aren't any code regressions that the developer hasn't addressed. And then it's already been through the test phase, so any security concerns or any issues with your third-party services or packages have been checked for. In this delivery phase, what you're doing is testing or making sure that when this artifact is ready to go to production, it's been through maybe more manual checks with the QA team. You're up on staging where the developers can make sure that third-party services are running correctly. You're just checking for everything possible that might go wrong in production. So in this phase, your environments have to be as close to production as possible. That means there should be similar data. You should be using the same services that are in prod. Maybe there's a free version you can use for staging, so you aren't racking up a large bill. But basically, the delivery phase is that final stop for the artifact before it goes all the way to prod in the deploy phase. This is where it's just clear sailing, and for sure this application is reliable. It's going to give users that consistent experience without them putting in a lot of support issues. And have some confidence in these changes that are being deployed. And that is why with DevOps, you can make multiple deploys within a day instead of within months. So DevOps and this entire process is in place to give you, the team, and the entire company the confidence that all of your code changes, all of those bug fixes, all of those new features that are about to be shipped to customers, it gives you that confidence that they actually will work and not bring down the whole system. It's there to make sure that you have the same kind of reliability that you had before. And the main thing that DevOps really gives you, it gives you the confidence of your users. They know if they put in a support issue, that those changes will be pushed before the next 3 months go by. They'll subtly notice those updates because you aren't shipping really, really large changes all at once. DevOps allows you to ship small changes at a time. And when you do these incremental updates, again, you just have that confidence and you know that this process is reliable versus somebody having the secret publishing process on their local machine, and when they're out of the office, nobody else can deploy an app. DevOps lets anyone take the code changes and deploy them whenever they need to go out. And so the way that we do that is by building a pipeline like this. Basically, what we do, at least with Conducto, is we go ahead and we make an image. If you're not familiar with Docker, it also helps tremendously with DevOps. There's no longer that issue with, well, it works on my machine, I don't know why it doesn't work on your machine. With Docker, you know that particular application will work in any environment, any machine, wherever you put it. So to build a pipeline, we start by making our image. We get the code directly from the version control, and we specify which branch we want to build off of. But then we come down here and we define the different nodes. So a node is basically representative of a step in our pipeline that needs to be run in order for the application to get to production. And in this particular pipeline, it's really simple just to show you what it's like. So we have our install node where we go ahead and install any npm packages, and we also run a little security check here. It's a really good idea to include security in your DevOps process from the very beginning because nobody wants to get hacked. Nobody wants their application to be susceptible to attackers. So go ahead and add some kind of security testing. Snyk, I don't have any affiliation with, but they do make a really good testing tool. So after you've installed all of your packages and you've done that first round of testing, then we go and do the actual tests. So we run our unit tests and make sure that there aren't any regressions or any weird behavior. Then we go down to the next node and we define it as the build process. And this is where that artifact gets generated. So like I mentioned before we get to the build, there are some tests that are run. And when we get the build artifact, it's ready to go to any environment that you specify. After we have the build, you can run more security tests, you can run those integration tests, whatever you want to add can go here, and then you can go ahead and deploy that artifact to staging or production or QA, wherever it needs to go next in your particular process. So now that we have all of the nodes in place, we need to make our pipeline so that we can run them in the right order. And to do that, we take that image we made and we're running it in the exact same container. So all of our packages and dependencies are still there. And all we do is take these individual nodes and add them to our pipeline just like you would with any other Python code. And once we have the pipeline built with all of the nodes, this one in particular is running in serial, so each node runs one after the other. But we do have the ability to run things parallel. So something you might want to run in parallel are your security tests and your integration tests, just to speed up that build deploy process a little bit more. So after we've added all of these nodes, we just go ahead and return a pipeline and then we run it. So once the pipeline is being run, it means that our app is on the way to production to our customers. So hopefully this gave you a quick overview of what DevOps is, all of the phases that are involved in the process, and some of the things that it helped fix from the previous way we used to deploy apps.